Hello there, Norwich City fans. You've been seeing and hearing a lot of me recently. We have been doing Twitter spaces, live talk-alongs, live streamed podcasts. There's no end to the Hodgeythehack content train at the moment. You'll also probably have seen that I've launched a new podcast with my mate Craig Easton, former footballer and football coach at professional level. Me and Easty are doing a thing called Hack and Tackle. And I've just posted a clip, basically two Muppets talking about football. That sounds about right. Two grumpy old men. Talking of grumpy old men, I welcome one of my oldest friends in the commentary business, Mr. Mark Rodden, is joining us. Now, Mark is a guy that I know from my time in France. Mark's gone still. Hopefully you can still see and hear me. But aye. Mark, I know from back then. We've been old friends for a while, and he's a man that hails from the Emerald Isle as well. So he knows all about Andrew Omobamidele and Adam Idah. How are you doing, Rodders, my man?
Yeah, it's been a while, eh? Not bad. Enjoyed watching Norwich.
Too long,
mate.
Well, that's the other thing. So you were commentating on Irish TV, and I'm sure you did a better job than... Well, Peter Drury's a good commentator, but they had... Right, this was their balance to the panel on Amazon Prime, right? They had Alan Shearer. They had Les Ferdinand sort of doing the analysis afterwards. Alan Shearer was in co-coms, and Eniola Luco. So basically, and the only Norwich City representation was provided by Simon Thomas, whose job is to remain neutral. Answer me that. Like, I mean, what are they playing at? Did you have a more representative thing going on in Irish TV, or were you on your Todd?
Yeah, so it's Premier Sports have a lot of Saturday games over here for Irish TV only, or for an Irish audience only, and they have a good few more in December. And actually, Chris Sutton was on the coverage here last night.
Oh, cracking!
So,
what's he like? Were you... Chris Sutton is obviously Norwich legend. Me and you both Celtic men as well. I don't know if I'm allowed to reveal that, actually. But I'm a Celtic man, and you're obviously an Irish guy. So in terms of that, though, what's he like? What's he like? What do people think of him in Ireland, Sutton? Is he someone that's popular over there, or what's the deal?
I think he is. It's hard to know, really, with this pandemic and everything. But yeah, I mean, he shoots straight, doesn't he? You know, so
that he does, and he doesn't miss the target.
No, he usually doesn't. So no, I think he's refreshing. He can be maybe over the top for some people sometimes, but I'd prefer that than someone just being pretty bland in their punditry. He's being honest. He's been there, done that, and I think we're all better off for that he's more forthright in his views.
No, totally with you on that, my man. Now, if anyone is watching this, if you let us know in the comments, just say hello. If you've got any questions that you want me to ask Mark, then I'll be happy to try and do that. And Mark, yourself, you'll see a tweet's gone up with a live stream of this. If you want to give that a wee retweet for your own channel, mate, then go for it. But I want to start off talking about what you thought. So you're obviously an impartial commentator last night. You're watching Norwich City. Obviously, the start of the season's been pretty dreadful under Daniel Farke, but Dean Smith's been appointed. Looks like somewhat of a corner has been turned. I'm not going to say that we're fully around the bend yet, but it does seem like at least the vehicle is moving in the right direction. What was your assessment of Norwich City based on last night and since Dean Smith's come in a more general basis?
I suppose you could look at it both ways. Should they have taken 6 points from their last two matches? Maybe. Had a lot of chances against Wolves. Against 10 men for 80 minutes. That's the worry for Norwich, isn't it? That, lowest scorers in the league. And you can see why last night, I think, even though you always say it's hard to play against 10 men at times. And to be fair to Newcastle, they were well set up once they lost Kieran Clark. But there's been a massive difference, I think, since Dean Smith came in. He's given everyone a lift. He brought back in Billy Gilmore, which I think is pretty important because
such a no-brainer, mate.
No, he's bossing England at Wembley, and then he's not getting in at Norwich. It didn't really make sense to me. I know he was used a bit earlier in the season. There's different system changes and stuff, but of all the young players that you have, he's got to be the one that's surely got to be playing every week, especially Scotland. Fingers crossed. Apologies to any Welsh, Austrians, Ukrainians watching, but it'd be nice if Scotland got to the World Cup, and he's kind of dragged them, or has been one of the men that kind of dragged them there. I did Scotland-Israel a couple of months back or whenever it was, and he was great in that game.
Which one? We've played Israel about 900 times. So
I think I've done about 2 of them over the years as well. But no, I did the comeback win, and that really.
Mate, what a game that was! You'll
Brilliant.
need to send me your call for that goal at the end that bounced off McTominay. I'll need to hear that.
Cracking finish. If only Josh Sargent had done something similar from that kind of range yesterday in the first half.
Well, right. Do you know what? The main focus is going to be to talk about the Irish lads, because that's obviously hail for the same country as you, and I'm sure you can provide probably some insight that we might not already have on those two. But it's worth the listeners knowing as well that you are also a seasoned veteran of covering the Bundesliga in the past for various outlets. So on that basis, you have seen quite a lot of Josh Sargent, you've seen quite a lot of Milot Rashica, and probably a number of people who have come and gone from Norwich over the past few years, especially with the influx under Daniel Farke. But concentrating on those two specifically, we'll start off with Sargent, because he obviously featured last night. Rashica didn't. What's your opinion on Josh Sargent? Do you think that he can come good, even if he doesn't turn into the 20-goal a season striker, which I don't think he ever will be?
Yeah.
But do you think he can even be a 5-goal a season man in the Premier League and be someone who? Because what I heard was from people, other people, not yourself necessarily, is at his best he could be like a kind of sort of not quite the same bracket of quality, but a kind of Dirk Kuyt type of player. What he did for Liverpool, where he was really hard-working and industrious in the right-hand side. Well, maybe Josh Sargent could provide that same kind of role for Norwich City. But the difference is Dirk Kuyt, even though he wasn't a great goal scorer, he did have quality, made good decisions, played the right passes in and around the box. Josh Sargent, in and around the box, both trying to provide chances and trying to score them, just looked like he didn't have a clue last night. And to be honest, you look at the miss against Brighton, you look at what he's done in his Norwich City career so far. The hold-up play's been there at times, but not enough for it to be enough to keep him in the team. And I think the only reason that he is getting as much game time as he is because obviously the fact that he can slot between playing wide, and then maybe if there's a change of system, you can shift him up front without having to make a substitution. I think that's why he gets in the team. But his quality in and around the box is just not good enough for me. But what's your opinion on him, not just based on last night or what he's done at Norwich City, but the kind of wider plethora of Josh Sargent that you've seen?
Yeah, it's a funny one because I'm still doing bits and pieces for the Bundesliga, and would have seen a fair bit of him over the last 3 seasons, I think, for Werder Bremen. And if you look at him, I'll come back to it, maybe the comparison with Idah, just in terms of their development. He's about a year ahead. He's 21, started very young. I think he was the 4th youngest goal scorer for the US. I saw him in Dublin when they played here, and he was pretty good actually in that game. He played up top, and his hold-up play was quite good. And in fairness to him, he's playing for I can't describe how poor Werder Bremen have been in the last couple of years. They got relegated last season, which tells you one thing. They scraped a playoff another year. They've been one of those teams that has just been getting by somehow until last season. And so it's hard, and especially a young attacking player. But he's coming to England off the back of 60 appearances in the last 2 seasons in the Bundesliga, 45 starts. So that's a lot of experience for a 21-year-old. And I know you're making the comparison with Dirk Kuyt. I wonder what Dirk Kuyt, I can't remember offhand what he was like at 21. But I imagine all the little things that you can improve on, the decision making, all that kind of stuff comes a little bit later.
Yeah.
And I don't think you're never gonna have an issue with Josh Sargent in terms of work rate, because he just puts in a shift, and he did last night as well. Like you say, is he gonna add more in attack, which is what he's there for, really? I mean, he's got 2 goals in the League Cup. I remember that was an absolute nightmare that the Bournemouth keeper had in that game. So he got a helping hand, and a few Norwich players got a helping hand.
Yeah, it's true.
But Bundesliga to Premier League, is he going to make a difference? Is he going to come in and start and, like you say, get 5 goals or whatever? We've seen it actually with similar players with a lot more experience, even guys on show last night like Joe Linton or even Miguel Almiron, who came on for Newcastle, an absolute star in the US. Joe Linton had one great season for Hoffenheim, lots of Champions League experience. And then, look, the Premier League is different, especially when you're a young guy coming through. So that's the big question for me with Josh Sargent. Is he going to push on? Can he be a 5-10 goal Premier League attacker? I'm not so sure. I'd be a lot more confident that Rashica is going to be much more effective, faster for Norwich. But put it that way, it makes sense. He's a bit older, so you have to give Sargent a bit of time. But Rashica.
Well, what about the injury proneness of Rashica? Because we've seen. I know that's been something that's dogged him a little bit, and obviously he's ended up unable to play last night. And it was just as it was looking like he was properly gonna blossom a wee bit, and he looked like the first of the summer signings that was truly going to have an impact. Then that happens. Is that something that Norwich City should be concerned about, that injury track record? Does he seem like a player that could be a problem that persists, maybe follows him throughout his career based on the litany of injuries that there have been so far in spells anyway?
Definitely. Unfortunately for him, he's missed big games. I remember Kosovo were in the running to qualify for the Euros. They had a chance, and I did a few of their games late on, and he was missing. He was missing 2 seasons ago for Werder Bremen. I remember he missed it. He missed a few crucial games, and then came back and basically more or less saved himself with his goals late in the season. I think it was 14 starts last term. So he got, I think, 9 and 8 in the other 2 full seasons before that, 3 goals last season. That is the worry. If especially if you're a winger and you're quick and you're dependent on your speed and getting away quickly, and you start to pick up these injuries. It happens to loads of guys. Look at Neymar, keeps getting these ankle injuries and problems that really hold him back. So I think that's got to be key, because you look last night at Norwich against 10 men for a lot of the game. They didn't do much, and they were lacking. Even with the change of system after half-time, they were lacking some sort of spark. You're hoping you're getting it from Cholis maybe, or Sargent, just to give Pukki. That's the other thing. Pukki needs support. He needs supply, which Rashica can definitely provide, but he needs support as well. He can't be the guy who's scoring every week. Like that happened 2 seasons ago. He got 11 Premier League goals, and Norwich got nowhere near safety. So who are the players in that Norwich team that are going to help out and chip in with goals? Rashica is...
You lead us
for sure.
You lead us quite well on to one of the Irish boys then. Idah came on, got a bigger stint than he's had in a while. I think it's the longest he's been on the pitch. I mean, this is an anecdotal thing. I've not checked it. But since the Spurs game, maybe, the last game before lockdown in the Cup, and he was really good that night. And Idah came on, and the first thing that he did, or the first memorable thing that he did, was he got the ball on the edge of the box. He tried to get out his feet quickly and get the shot away. And it was almost like the diagrammatic opposite of what Josh Sargent would have done in that situation. He'd probably have been a lot more ponderous and, I don't know, stumbled over it, whatever. I think Idah is a player that has a lot of potential. But the problem for Idah is, in the fits and starts that he's getting, he doesn't seem to be making enough of an impact, definitely under Daniel Farke, to sway the manager's hand. Obviously, the explosion onto the scene with the hat trick against Preston was quite something. He's not followed that up. In terms of his potential, though, having spoke to insiders at the club, I know for a fact that they're still very, very, very high on him. And Norwich City, no talent. That's one thing I will say. They do know talent, and even though they work within their means, they do very well in terms of recruitment and in terms of progressing academy players to the first team. That was one of the great successes of Daniel Farke's era, 11 academy players getting debuts, one of whom was Idah. What's the perception of him in Ireland? Because I've seen you can't go by sort of trial by social media, but when Ireland play it says a lot that you're putting. Maybe did he make his debut up front ploughing a lone furrow when he was 19? Is that am I right in that? That says a lot in itself, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. So he was very good at under 21 level. So Ireland went from Mick McCarthy to Stephen Kenny, who was the under 21 manager.
That's quite a culture change, isn't it?
Final. Yeah. It was. That story's complicated, but I think I'd be a big fan of Stephen Kenny, and from knowing what he's done over the years in Ireland with Dundalk, getting them to the Europa League.
Yeah. And so is the nation of Luxembourg here.
Well,
I'm only jesting, mate.
A nice spat between the two managers after the last game. That was fun.
They're really dirty, by the way. Scotland played them in the build-up to the Euros, and they're like proper dirty football.
Put it about, eh? You can put it about, yeah.
No, especially those two brothers, the brothers Grimm. I forget their actual surnames. But
there's three of them. Till, Sebastian, and Olivier. Yeah.
Right. Well, I only spied two of them because I wasn't really. I mean, at that point, I was just focused, zeroed in on whatever Scotland were doing. But carry on about Idah.
No, so Kenny came through, became the 21 manager, had a great under 21 team. If you look at, I was just talking about it earlier. If you look at the Irish under 21 team compared to the senior team, like you could drop some of those senior players down. Idah, Omobamidele, sorry, and we'd have an unbelievable under 21 team. So all of those guys can still play, which tells you how good their progress has been, how quickly they've been promoted. But he was part of a front three with Troy Parrott, who's at Spurs on loan at MK Dons now, Aaron Connolly at Brighton, player whose career has stalled, unfortunately, a little bit. Electric front three. So again, that's a system that would suit him. He knows it inside out, a system that Norwich have played at times. But obviously the difference is Teemu Pukki is playing through the middle for Norwich. He's a hard man to dislodge. So Idah in Ireland was given a start, and it was at a time when Stephen Kenny just threw all the young players in, and at a time when we were getting hit to an unbelievable degree by COVID. And I'm not talking about the country, that's one thing, but the squad just had incredibly bad luck between close contacts, COVID cases, whatever. So that was one reason he was promoted, but also Stephen Kenny's a big believer in him. And it has taken time. It's definitely taken time. And obviously the situation at Norwich hasn't helped him. But the last few games, he's definitely he's come on, and he's got 13 caps at senior level. He's still only 20. Which says a lot, and a lot of those are starts.
That's more than he has first team starts for Norwich City, and in terms of first team appearances, it's not many more than that.
Exactly. So it tells you first of all that Kenny absolutely has faith in him. He hasn't scored yet, but to be honest, they had such a bad run. You mentioned the first game against Luxembourg was a nightmare. We lost 1-0 at home to them. Not a bad side, Luxembourg, to be fair. But you end the campaign with all these guys coming through. Omabamidele as well. We'll talk about him, obviously having a great time with Ireland. And Idah, man of the match against Azerbaijan, played really well away in Portugal up against Pepe and Ruben Dias. And
in fairness, that Portugal team plays completely the wrong way for the players absolutely. That it's got. It's mental. But
well, I do the Portuguese league most weeks on the World Feed, and
it's madness. We shan't digress, but that's an interesting topic in itself, mate.
A couple of hours on Portugal and how they messed this up royally, but no, to be fair, but still, Idah's coming up against these lads, and I do think the last few months you can see the difference at international level. Anyway, he's still, the problem is he's still searching for a goal, and I think if he gets a goal, he'll start pushing on, whether that's at club level or international level.
Do you think almost the fact that there's so much confidence in him, and he does seem to be the man at international level, if he can get a goal, put in a really good performance for the Republic of Ireland, it could have a galvanising effect potentially on his club career? Definitely.
It's happened with a lot of our players, to be honest, and it happens with, you look through our kind of level, Scotland, Ireland, that kind of level, although you're a bit further ahead than us now, to be fair.
Peaks and troughs, mate, let's be honest.
Yeah, this is it. But you get guys who excel at international level, and all of a sudden they get big moves. Even Lyndon Dykes or someone like that is a good example with Scotland, who's got his move to England, doing well in the Championship. But I think that's all that's missing. The last couple of matches for Ireland, I think Idah was. You can see it's weighing on him a little bit. He was snatching at chances, but he's getting them, and he's, as I say, he is I think he's filled out a bit more. He's bulked up a little bit.
I've noticed that.
Yeah, and
the instincts there. Well, Mark, like that's the thing for me. So if you look at Josh Sargent, I don't think there's a goal scorer's instinct anywhere near him. I don't even know if there's an attacker's instinct yet. Like I've got serious reservations about him. Although I'm going to give him time, obviously, to settle, and you're not going to judge a player at this point necessarily in terms of condemning them to the scrap heap. But Adam Idah comes on, right? There was that other chance where he kind of got in the sort of just inside the right channel, the right-hand side of the box, and the angle was closing down, and he knew the way that a good striker knows. He thought, the only way I'm going to beat the keeper here is with power, and he rattled it, and it was wide of target, and I think a wee bit over, but what he did is it was the right idea. It was the right attempt at a finish. Now, that for me shows where that for me shows why he is now, in my opinion, should be second in the pecking order behind Teemu Pukki rather than Josh Sargent, regardless of experience, anything like that. Adam Idah has the makings of a really good goal scorer and potentially a Premier League goal scorer. Josh Sargent doesn't.
I'd agree. Well, look, I personally, call me biased, whatever. I think Idah's ceiling is a lot higher than Josh Sargent's. And
how high is it?
That's hard to look. This is the big thing with him. We're judging him on 49 minutes and 8 appearances this season in the league until last night. I watched the Leeds game, and
can tell a man was commentating a game last night.
Yeah, exactly. But you throw Adam Idah on for 2 minutes or whatever it was, 3 or 4 minutes against Leeds, and expect that's.
Mate, it was nonsense. Daniel Farke lost his way completely. But I think last night he got a good crack of the whip, and he showed enough to get another goal. Not to start, but to get another goal.
Yeah, definitely. I think that was first time in a while I've seen him for Norwich where he's made an impact, but it's because he had a bit of time. But I do think he held it up a bit better. His movement for one of those chances you were talking about was good, running across the line, and even for the goal. And this was something we discussed on commentary, not necessarily to do with Idah, but just with Norwich in general. They weren't getting anyone in the box in the first half. And with the goal, they have the extra bodies forward. Yes, they're pushing. Newcastle are tired. You have the extra man, but Idah's behind Dubravka. Dubravka makes a mistake, not necessarily because Adam Idah's waiting there, but because there is another Norwich player in the area that he's half aware of. He spills it, right?
It's a good point about last night's game. The only good bit of movement from an attacking player in the first half was when Cholis made that little run. Yeah. And I think that was another one that could have potentially been VAR'd because it came up off the hand. But obviously these decisions don't always go Norwich City's way. That's something that any Norwich fans watching will be well aware of. Time is pressing on, mate. So I want to move on to talk about Andrew Omobamidele. Now, he has been the unluckiest man in the Norwich City changing room since Dean Smith has come in, because he came off the back. Me and you were actually texting earlier on about the idiotic analysis in Match of the Day when they covered the Leeds game, where they basically tried to pin a lot of the blame on Omobamidele. I think in the Sky coverage as well. Can't remember who the pundit was.
That's
right. It was Jamie Redknapp. I mean, he's morphing into his dad anyway, so it's an easy mistake to make. Used to be a good-looking guy as well. Now, but Jamie Redknapp was kind of saying the same stuff, and I was looking at it, and I actually put a Twitter poll out. I was like, because I thought, am I like getting this wrong? And the vast majority of Norwich fans were like, no, Hodgie, he's been good. And the thing is, he was playing a weird role. It was like a hybrid between a left centre-back and a left-back. And he was up against the best player in the field, a guy that was a good couple of levels above anyone else in the field. That was a championship game. And then Rafinha was a Champions League player in that championship game. And Omobamidele he stuck to the task well and marshalled them for the most part really well throughout that game. And he had the one moment of quality of Rafinha, and it was the difference between the two teams. You couldn't pin that on Andrew Omobamidele. Against Brentford in Daniel Farke's final game, another really good performance for the young man. And I look at what he was doing, and I mean, Norwich City have brought some good defenders through in recent years. Obviously, Max Aarons is still there. Jamal Lewis has moved on. Ben Godfrey's a good player as well, albeit he originally sort of came from York City, but Norwich City really moulded him into the player he was. But I look at Omobamidele, and for me, Max Aarons is a different player, and he's obviously playing as a wing back. But in terms of the two centre halves, I think Ben Godfrey's an interesting one because he's a ball playing centre half, but he's one of those players that you could deploy in three positions. You could play him as a defensive mid, you could play him as a right back, or you could play him as a centre back. But he's not absolutely amazing at one of them. Andrew Omobamidele could be a really brilliant centre half, definitely a Premier League player, at least like an Everton kind of level player, maybe even better for my money. What about you in terms of his ceiling, and what's the perception of him in Ireland? How good do people think he is, and how good do you think he is?
Yeah, I think he's brilliant. And as you say, we were discussing the match of the day analysis, which would never have happened again. It could be biased. It would never have happened with an English player, a young English player. Would never have happened.
Of course it wouldn't.
Just absolutely went after him as if he was the only
you know
problem
another
with Norwich
scenario?
that day against Leeds.
No, I know. See another scenario. See if he was on loan from like Spurs, right?
Yeah.
Would never happen either.
Yeah,
Even if he
probably
was
as well.
Irish, would never happen.
And it was barely pointed out that he's playing completely out of position. To me, against one of the best wingers in the Premier League right now, like you say. But to me, it was, and interestingly, I was looking at the Norwich sites, and they were a bit like you. They kind of said, no, he did well enough. Like, he had his difficult moments, but so was he absolutely amazing in that game? Of course, he made mistakes. No, but he was. It was certainly not that bad. So in one way, you're kind of going, why was Daniel Farke playing him there? That's absolutely crazy. But on the other, you're going, well, Farke trusted him, and he would have known that he's up against Rafinha and backed him to go there and do a job. And obviously, he got his goal in that game, which will give him great confidence. I think the difference between him and Idah is, which is a bit strange saying it because Idah is a year older and hasn't played that much either, but Omabamidele has been getting those games. He started at the back end of last season for Norwich, so his confidence is high anyway. And it's slightly different playing even in an Ireland team that's doing a lot of defending and has good experienced players around him compared to playing up front for Ireland when our attack and play at the start under Kenny was all over the shop and we're, 6-7 games without a goal. It was crazy. So how high is his ceiling? I think he's a fantastic player and he has so much potential because he's so composed on the ball and just
but he defends as well,
such a cool customer. No, exactly. And that's the thing. So he played he came on in Portugal. We lost 2 Ronaldo goals in the last second of the game. We probably should have won away in Portugal a couple of months back. And that was his first appearance, came on, barely put foot wrong. Serbia at home. And Serbia, fantastic side. Had once they have a first 11 out, new manager, completely different side to the one Scotland beat, I gotta say, to get to the Euros. But they topped the group, brilliant.
And by the way, like anyone that's not paying attention to the Championship this season, Mitrovic is crazy.
Class international striker for sure. So he started, that was his first start, and absolutely incredible performance. He would have got man of the match, only Gavin Bazunu, who's on loan at
very good goalkeeper.
Portsmouth. Fantastic performance in that game. But after it, everyone's kind of saying, Omabamidele, he's a bit like Paul McGrath, isn't he? Just the way he plays, like he's so calm, like you say.
Wow,
just Rolls Royce kind of defending, right?
That's the vibe you get. Now, I mean, if Irish people are saying that, that's crazy high praise because I know what the nation thinks of Paul
McGrath tweeted it afterwards. He said, like, Andrew Omabamidele, take a bow. That was incredible, So we're getting very excited.
I love that, by the way. I'm buzzing with that comment, and I wasn't aware of that. That's great.
Yeah, exactly. The funny thing is, he was born a few years after Paul McGrath retired, so he doesn't even have an awareness of the comparison, just how much of a god we think Paul McGrath is. But he's a funny one because he was it strikes me, not having seen him as, a kid growing up, it strikes me as a kind of Virgil van Dijk scenario, that he was almost finding it too easy without kind of realizing, and you're kind of going, how did he only get picked up now? So I'm talking about as a kid, and didn't really get picked up by representative sides, but the club he was with, Leixlip United, not a massive team at the time. Josh Georgie, who's in the under 23s at Norwich, was a teammate.
Yep.
They had full faith in him, and they were kind of going like, he's not getting picked up, but like we can see he's that good, and he was always had that composure on the ball, calmness on the ball, and they encouraged it. And it's so different to see that, especially for an Irish defender, I suppose.
Well, I mean, Richard Dunn
Premier
used to
League
play at the
defender,
back. Do you know what I mean?
Look,
So,
but
no harm in the guy, but like, I mean, it's a different type of player, isn't it?
Absolutely. But the other thing is, he played as a striker, as a midfielder, and then he dropped back, I think, when he was 13 around.
So that's quite similar to like Dutch players, isn't it? Because Dutch players, one of the things they do is they make them play all over the field so that they can get an appreciation for that. That's how you end up with a defender like Virgil van Dijk. Yeah. And Omobamidele, shades of that going on.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why I made the Van Dijk comparison, because the idea was that he didn't get picked up by Celtic or a bigger club by Celtic, or a more club with bigger financial power than Celtic, say, because he'd kind of just coasted a little bit and found it all too easy. And then that was the same with when he was at Celtic, and clearly he was a phenomenal player. Why it took so long for English clubs to come, because kind of he's a bit casual, and it's like, it's not. He's just fine. So that's the impression I get from reading the comments from his coaches. They kind of said like, yeah, this is why he wasn't getting picked up, because it was almost too easy. That he was just doing enough to get through games, and then it was only picked up kind of under 17, I think, when he started with Ireland. Then he got a lot of trials. If memory serves, it was kind of Birmingham, Stoke, Rotherham, and kept coming back, and they said no. And I think he had 3 with Norwich before they said yeah. And funnily enough, they lost 6-0 in the game against Chelsea, and you're going, right, I'm not going to get picked this time, but they said, yeah, we'll take you, because they obviously saw something in him at that stage. So, I mean, it's hard to describe what an impact he's made to the Irish squad in general.
So that this really interests me, because I think, obviously, when you're watching Norwich City, a lot of Norwich City fans are only really, I mean, they're paying vague attention to what the team's doing international duty, but it's impossible if you're not supporting that country or following that country to be aware of not so much just the performances or what they do in the games themselves, but the effect they have in a more general sense. So actually give us a bit on Omobamidele about that, and then Idah as well, just the kind of more cultural, wider ramifications of it.
Yeah, well, look, in Ireland, it's great because we have all these guys coming through. Bazunu, who people probably aren't aware of as much.
I've commentated a lot of Gavin Bazunu games. Funnily enough, the last one I did, he had an absolute 2 howlers actually against Ipswich. But he's a brilliant goalkeeper. On loan for Rochdale last season, he was insanely good.
So he's been incredible for Ireland as well. So you have all these guys, Chidozie Ogbene as well, who are coming through, who are reflecting wider Irish society and the people who came to live in Ireland when the economy got a bit better. And you have the likes of Idah and Omabamidele, fathers from Nigeria. And so you're seeing that, so we're really proud of that we're seeing a real proper
absolutely, you
reflection
should be,
of our Irish society. And these guys are coming through, they're trailblazers. They're all, a lot of them are such, they just all seem like great role models and mature beyond their years, sort of thing,
I think that happens with football players now more generally. They do seem to mature a bit quicker because of just, I mean, maybe the pressures of the modern game probably have a factor, and the fact that you now need to comport yourself as a disciplined elite athlete from a very young age if you want to reach the level, even the sort of fledgling just about to capitalise on their potential maybe level that Omobamidele and Idah are at. to even get to that point, you need to be incredibly disciplined and incredibly mature at a young age now. But yeah, that's what's been the wider impact though of them and what they've kind of meant to Ireland as a team. So you mentioned sort of in the kind of cultural side, but I mean more within the squad, within the fandom as well of Irish football.
Look, we love like any football supporter, you want to see whether there's a club or a country, you love seeing these new guys coming through that you get excited about, and more so Idah was part of that 21 setup. Omabamidele sort of skipped it, but that 21 team went pretty close to qualification for the Euros. We never qualified for the Euros, and funnily enough, the pandemic and just the fact that so many of the younger lads ended up getting called up for the senior team sort of scuppered our chances. But for a while, it's such an exciting under-21 team. When you think Creevin Keller's doing really well at Liverpool as well as another really good young player of that age group. And you see these guys coming through. Idah, I think he got, it was 5 goals in 12 games for the under-21s. But you see the pitfalls as well. So we got really excited about Troy Parrott. We were getting really excited about Aaron Connolly, two really good attacking players who will hopefully still come good, you know.
They'll have careers, but maybe the fact that Omobamidele and Idah at Norwich City is better because there's more chance of getting a chance.
Yeah, exactly. Well, especially Troy Parrott, there's just so much pressure placed on him at Spurs. Because we had it before, I suppose, although Robbie Keane came through at Coventry, it associated him with, you know, the bigger teams.
That's a lot to burden for a young man.
You know, it's the next Zidane or it's the next, you know, Messi or whoever. There's all it starts sooner and sooner with these young guys now, and I think that's especially attacking players. It hasn't helped in Ireland because you're taking over from Robbie Keane, so he is suffering from that comparison. Because people are suddenly going, oh, Robbie Keane got, what was it, 68 international goals, whatever it was, which is unheard of. Before he was around, our record was 19, 20, something like that. Yeah. Noel Quinn and John Aldridge, you know. So it's and to me, it's just, I've studied this a lot. You see different countries, different approaches. Actually, Omabamidele's team, under-17s team, played Belgium in the Euros 2 years ago. Drew 1-1, went out of the group, should have gone through, but that Belgium team had a guy called Jeremy Doku playing for them, who is another guy who's suffered because of injuries. I did the Belgian league a lot, and I saw him coming through, and over the course of 6 months where he was playing every week for Anderlecht, he's going from kind of, he's pretty good, he's raw, to Jesus, like he's made so much progress in 6 months, he's incredible. So like that's when I remember tweeting out, it's one of the few things I got right? Italy, Belgium, I just tweeted out, a lot of people are going to be talking about Jeremy Doku after. What's happened to him after that game where he was sensational, won the penalty, got a bad injury with Rennes, so his progress is stalled. So there's so many things that can go wrong.
And like obviously talks of a massive move prior to that, you know.
Yeah. Well, he was at Liverpool. He was shown around, met Klopp, met Gerrard, but decided to stay.
But Bayern as well were really close.
Pretty much everyone. So that's. But he made, and that's a comparison maybe with Norwich. He made the decision to say, no, I'll stay with Anderlecht, smaller team, and even after leaving Anderlecht. So Liverpool was like when he was 16, was he going to go there? And Klopp's telling him, you can be the next man. That's how I see you potentially being progressing that way. So he went, so I go, no, I'll play more at Anderlecht. And then same with Rennes. He went, well, Rennes are in the Champions League. I'll go there. It's the next step up. So
there's something to be said for that, though, because going back to the Virgil van Dijk comparison, going Groningen, going Celtic, Southampton, and then Liverpool, he's walked into Liverpool and he's pretty quickly the best defender in the world.
Yeah, probably should have gone maybe a year before from Southampton to Liverpool, maybe, but no, that's from studying it. Like the Belgians, especially, back in 2000, it was all about just getting, you know, how are we getting these guys games? We got to get these guys games. I interviewed the Belgian manager after that 17s match, for example, and he said that game in front of 5,000 fans in the European Championship is way better than like 10 under 23 matches or whatever. So this is where it becomes an issue for me and a worry for me. Is Adam Idah, are we going to be talking about Adam Idah at the end of the season and saying, well, he got on 14 times as a sub, made 2 starts, started against Liverpool in the League Cup, started
I
against.
think a lot of that's in Adam Idah's hands, though, because
It is.
So, first thing is, if Teemu Pukki was to get injured, I would say he was next man up at this point, right? But if Teemu Pukki stays fit, then it's up to Idah to seize his chance if he gets it. And he will get a chance due to load management, due to cup games, whatever. There will be chances. He's got to make sure, both in terms of on the field, taking the chances and seizing the opportunity. He's got to make sure that he does that. And that's where it's in Adam Idah's hands. In a way, it's a bit easier to do that as a striker than it is as a defender, because as a defender, you're kind of reliant on the committee around you. Sometimes they can just change it because the defence as a whole hasn't worked, rather than you necessarily yourself. And to be honest, that's what's happened with Omobamidele. They've gone back to the fact that Grant Hanley's the captain. Him and Gibson were a really good partnership last season, record-breaking partnership, in fact, in the Championship. So I think that factor has kind of played against Omobamidele. I'm almost more worried for him, Mark. I kind of think, I think he'll be really good, but I want to see him get the football that could make him a proper world beater. Stuart in the comments said, Omobamidele, I firmly believe, will be at Buendia value cost because he has zero fear and does not let things get on top of him. And that's an interesting thing. The last thing I want to talk about these two, because I know you need to wrap up fairly soon, is mentality. So do you, talking about both of them separately, go with Omobamidele first. I think he's got the mentality to definitely be a very good player at Norwich City and probably at a higher level. Adam Idah, this is no harm in the kid, but I've still got a question about him, because and it's hard, and that's where it's harder as a striker, because having the mentality to get over those patches where you don't score, those patches where you're coming off the bench and just getting fits and starts and little nibbles at it. It's harder as a striker to make an impact. You're more likely to play 90 minutes as a defender than you are as a striker if you're on the fringes. So that's where the mentality comes in, and it's almost more important for Idah. And I think that, with Omobamidele, we've probably covered that. He does seem to have that character. Idah, what do you think of the mentality in that side of it? Because for me, that's what's going to make or break him.
Yeah, well, Omobamidele, I think, has a bit more time on his side. Again, we're talking about a guy who's made 20 appearances, senior level, international and club combined. So that's what he's produced already. So I think he still has a bit more time. Hopefully he'll get his share of games this season. But again, if he only gets 10 games from here, that's probably still fine for where he's at. But it's been a problem, especially for Ireland in the last few years, is that issue of guys being great up to under 17, say, and then all sorts of things can happen. You need a bit of luck, but you need games. And I think Idah's at that stage where he needs games. And I really hope that Dean Smith taking over is going to give him more of a chance. And as well, that half an hour, even he had a bit of a spat with Fabian Schär. That was good. I like that from him. You're talking about mentality. That's what you want to see. He's not backing down there. He feels he belongs. He feels he has a right to. And Schär was an embarrassment rolling around after being,
Oh, mate, I hate the fact that modern games become defenders doing that's become the norm.
So with Idah, I think the big thing is games, and we were talking about it in Ireland the last couple of months. Because he was getting, as I say, just something that's not going to help a player at his stage of his development. 1 or 2 minutes here and there. That's not going to help him because he's not got time to show what he can do, get a feel for it, and it's not going to help his confidence, I think, either. Because that's all I'm good for.
Do you think he's got the mettle to do it? And do you think if it got to the end of this season and he hadn't made a proper first team impact, that you'd maybe be looking at a loan move next year, or maybe?
I was thinking before. What are we? Yeah, a couple of months ago, I was thinking he has to move on loan in January because, was he kept around last season just in case Pukki gets injured?
Well, that's the problem when you've got such a talisman, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's a talisman, and you just play one guy through the middle. So he's unlucky in that sense. But there comes a time And I think Aaron Connolly's another guy, Irish guy we could talk about, where if you're not getting a look in Aaron Connolly's case, I think it's because he hasn't done it enough at club level when he has got the chances. But with Idah, it's like, right, he's at an age where he hasn't got enough time to show what he can do. Do you know what I mean? So
that's it, and it's development curve, isn't it?
Exactly right. So you see all these young guys, and Josh Sargent, as I said, is the perfect example. He's got 60 games in the last 2 years behind him in the Bundesliga. I have absolutely no doubt if Idah went on loan to Hoffenheim, whoever, whatever team in the Bundesliga, he would get games, he'd score goals, he'd grow as a player, he'd get confidence. Is that going to happen at Norwich?
No,
I don't know.
It's
different if he's getting what he got yesterday. Do you know what I mean? If he's getting a fair crack of the whip and he's getting half an hour, then we can tell. Do you know what I mean? Then
and that, by the way,
goal,
that's the managerial change for you. So I think Dean Smith is going to give him a fair crack of the whip, and that's what I wanted to see. It also says a lot, I think, that Stuart Webber has always kept him around because he believes in him and he thinks he's got the ability to impact it when he does come in. So I think that's obviously a factor there, and it's just about Idah getting those chances, taking those chances. It was another reason that the club had to move on from Daniel Farke, because so many players were becoming just out in the cold, disenfranchised with the whole thing. So I think that's the case with Idah. Last thing I want to talk about, Mark, and I could not go my first podcast with a man from the Emerald Isle and not ask about the mercurial figure. Once on a Norwich City commentary about this player, I said he came through the ranks in Ireland, but he looks like he would have come through La Masia. And that is Mr. Wes Hoolahan, who's still absolutely bossing games in League One at 39 years old. He's quality, mate. He is one of the most aesthetically pleasing footballers. And I've commentated like a considerably higher level of game than Norwich. Not as much as you, mind you, but I have commentated teams at Champions League level in their domestic leagues before, and I can't think of many players that were more joyous in the eye than Wes Hoolahan. How revered is he by Irish fans? Wessi.
Look, he's up there. We've had a few players like that have just been not used as much as they should have been. I think he came through at the wrong time. If he's come through a couple of years later, when Barcelona and Spain have done their thing,
fair point, actually.
He definitely suffered from that. Look, he's doing well for Shelbourne, but he's small, isn't he? So I saw him. Shelbourne nearly got to the Champions League group stage one year. They drew 0-0 against Deportivo La Coruña at home, and he was brilliant in that game. And
which Deportivo vintage was that? Was it Aldo Ducha sort of vintage, or is it a bit after that?
What was the bald striker they had up top? His name escapes me now.
That's going to annoy me.
Walter.
They had Roy Mackay, and then they moved on for him, didn't they? Leave that with me. Pandiani.
Something. Oh, Jesus, why is it?
I think it was Pandiani. Do you know what
this is? Pandiani, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Pandiani. Aye.
I think he got a goal or two in the second leg. Lost second leg 3-0 anyway. But no, like Wes was whatever age he was then, 16. Yeah, he was still 16 years ago. He was 20, so he was getting on even at that stage, and he's still in Ireland. And I think it was Paul Lambert took him to Livingston.
Yes, that's right.
And then Blackpool and then Norwich. So he had to work his way up, like. And to be fair to Martin O'Neill, loads of people slaughtered Martin O'Neill for not playing him enough, but he played him way more than any other Irish manager did. And he did help us get to Euro 2016, and he scored at Euro 2016, 1-0 draw against Sweden. Great goal as well. And it was just magic that he was there. And speaking of magic, I remember seeing Alex Neil actually on your pod talking about him and saying like he was a magician, and my job was to get him in areas, where he could work his magic. I think he has 5 or 6 assists in 12 games this season still in League One.
Do you know what, mate? I was doing I do some EFL commentary at the moment. I was doing Cambridge the other night, and they're obviously managing like the games that he plays, and it was a rest night, and I was absolutely spewing, man. Like honestly, like I did a game last year as well. It was one of those like properly foggy, you could not see a thing, right? And I'm you know yourself, and I was doing it what we call off tube. So trying to watch it on a screen, trying to identify who players were with basically no identifiable factors other than the vague area of the pitch that they're in and the direction that they're running in. But when the ball was with Wes, it was glued to a wee guy's left foot, and he was just had complete control. It was his to leave you spellbound with. So I would be going, yep, good passing move here, like trying to buy time as I try to know who the players are. Houlihan, you would know when it was Wes. And as a player, I mean, honestly, that fans of this podcast know my season as the Norwich City commentator. I wasn't the most polished back then, but it's still the most joyous season that I've ever had commentating in games. And Wes was a massive part of that. He was a massive part of that.
He's like an old street footballer, but he played a lot of futsal when he was younger as well. That's something every country should be investing in. So that's and funnily enough, if you read about it, if you read interviews with guys and like Gio Reyna, all these different guys around Europe, they'll say played futsal when I was younger, and it's any guy with such good close control. And that's usually one reason for it. But 43 caps for Ireland, if you're talking now, and to be fair, Stephen Kenny, we're playing a lot more progressive football under Kenny, and it's starting to bear fruit. We're actually missing Wes Houlihan. Like, that's, if we add him, it would be perfect with the rest of the guys around him, because that's what you want. You would build a team around him now, whereas back then it wasn't happening. So even Norwich are missing Wes Houlihan this season, or Wendia, or whoever. That's who they were kind of missing last night, I thought, as well. Just someone to pick a pass
running around the box. You're not wrong. It's the role we want to see Billy Gilmore step into, definitely. Last one for you, Mark, because I'll let you go now, because we're definitely into stoppage time in terms of the time you told me. Do you think Norwich City stay up based on what you've seen so far this season, and particularly, obviously, seeing the team at close quarters last night?
The worry, and I could see Dean Smith was anxious. He was looking very anxious on the sideline last night as the game went on. The worry is, are they going to have too many games like that? Like Wolves, where they had big chances and they didn't score, and like last night, where, it's not going to happen very often, where you get 80 minutes against 10 men and against a team that's been struggling. That is the worry, but if you asked me that, 6 weeks ago, I would have said you're having a lot.
We were down by
like a stone, right? But they're four games unbeaten, so why not at this stage? And the home form is obviously going to be key. I saw they took 4 points against Newcastle 2 years ago, so judging them against Newcastle is probably not the best thing to do, but you're picking up the points. Do you know what I mean? Whereas if you're in with a fighting chance now, only 3 points behind Watford, 4 off Southampton. There's teams there that can be sucked in. Even Brentford, Crystal Palace, great starts, whatever. But it's not going to take too much, I don't think. And if you've already beaten Brentford, but those kind of teams, if you can beat them, I think it'll be very tight. I think you've given yourselves a better chance with Dean Smith, because he's been there with Villa as well, to be honest. He's survived a relegation scrap, so
seasoned veteran of the...
I think it might go down to the last day or two.
Do you know, I think if we can go into the final match day with a chance, I think every Norwich City fan in Christendom would have taken that. Definitely a few weeks ago.
From that point of view, last night is not a bad result. Keeps the unbeaten run going.
That was the key thing for me.
Newcastle are in big trouble. So
they're a poor side. Brentford are not the side. I mean, the start masks a lot of problems.
Yeah, they'll get goals, right? That's the thing with them. They will get goals.
Yeah, and that's the big problem with us. Give us Ivan Toney and we'll finish 14th probably. But I mean, to be honest, you actually want to see a bit more from him if you're a Brentford fan. But I do feel he's going to go on some sort of spot at some point. But I do think Brentford maybe a worse team than us. Watford maybe a worse team than us. I think Leeds, if Rafinha goes in January, which has been mooted, then I think they're in a lot of bother.
I think they got a couple of wins there recently, like last night as well. They're absolutely vital. They were.
That's it. It was a last minute goal as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, they're not scoring goals. They're scoring about one a game, and despite Rafinha, if Rafinha's not there, like I say, it's a different story. So yeah, I think it's going to be tight in general. You know, I don't think there's going to be anyone cut adrift too early.
Well, we looked like that team. Fortunately, we're not now. Mark, can I just thank you, mate? Listen,
No,
I wish we had a bit longer to catch up, but we'll need to definitely do that. I do a few different types of podcasts now, mate. You know your football inside out. We'll probably get you back on one. But let's catch up on Zoom or something, mate, and listen to all you Norwich fans that have watched and listened to the content over the past few weeks. I think I've been oversaturating you with content, so I might have a wee break after tomorrow night's Hack and Tackle podcast. Goodness knows I need one. But yes, thank you very much to everyone who supported in the live talk along space. By the way, Mark, that might interest you. When you were doing your professional commentary last night, I was doing a talk along on a Twitter space, which I was kind of getting commentary
Can you say that in English?
So no.
Talk along in a Twitter space.
Right. So do you know about Twitter Spaces?
Yeah, kind of.
Right.
Yeah.
So I was doing a talk along. So you get people do watch alongs. I was talking along to the Amazon. I wish I had Irish Premier Sports actually now, but to the Amazon Prime coverage, doing rubbish Alan Shearer impressions, slagging him, slagging Mark Clattenburg, and then developing some sort of commentary Tourette's whenever we get near the penalty box, which fortunately wasn't too often for the people that listened in. But the live talk along was great fun. Thank you to everyone who contributed to that. Thank you to everyone who's followed my Twitter. If you have enjoyed the podcast tonight, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Hodgeythehack. You can find me on all the social media. Hodge On Nodge, if you're listening on the podcast version, then please do give us a wee rating on there and make sure and subscribe to the audio podcast as well. But thank you everyone for listening tonight, and thank you to Mark for coming on. And on the ball, City, come on you yellows.